Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. It was a Friday morning, and the day began like any other. The house was quiet, the coffee was brewing, and Claire was scrolling through her phone at the kitchen counter. As I poured my cup, she looked up and casually mentioned, "I'll be out tonight with some friends from work. Might not be back until late." She said it with such ease, like she was talking about the weather. But there was something in the way she avoided eye contact that set off an alarm. It was strange because, usually, we talked about these things beforehand, whether we'd be home for dinner or if one of us would be out late. But Claire brushed it off as if it were nothing. A wave of discomfort settled in my gut, but I shook it off. After all, she'd given me no real reason to doubt her before. Over the years, we'd built a life together. We had our routines, our traditions, our sense of normalcy. Still, something about the casualness of her words unsettled me. After she left for work, I stayed in the kitchen, nursing my coffee a little longer than usual, replaying her words in my mind. The quiet of the house seemed heavier that morning, the familiar silence somehow charged. Shrugging it off, I headed into the day, determined not to read too much into what could simply be my own paranoia. The workday passed in a blur. I kept busy, as always, trying to forget the unsettling feeling that had hovered over me all day. By the time I got home, it was well past 6. Claire hadn't texted to check in, and I hadn't heard from her since she left in the morning. I told myself she was just out having a good time, but it was hard to shake the uneasy feeling that gnawed at me. After grabbing a quick dinner, I settled onto the couch and flipped through channels aimlessly, trying to distract myself. Hours dragged by, and Claire still hadn't called. Around 10, my phone buzzed, a message from Josh, a friend who'd been close to us for years. "Hey, just thought you should know, I saw Claire tonight. She seemed close with some guy." My heart skipped a beat. My mind raced through a dozen scenarios, each more uncomfortable than the last. But I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe Josh had misread the situation. After all, it was a party, people got friendly. Right? Still, I couldn't shake the thought. I replayed our conversation from that morning, remembering the flicker of something unspoken in her eyes, the way she'd avoided my gaze. My hand clenched around the phone as I reread Josh's message. I could have called her right then and there, demanded an explanation, but I decided against it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without real evidence. Confronting her now, without any proof, would only lead to a fight, one that she could easily turn around on me. I could already picture it. "You don't trust me," she'd say, or, "Are you really going to accuse me of something like that?" That night, I hardly slept. My mind raced through our years together, every moment, every memory, combing for clues I might have missed. Claire had been my partner, my confidant. I had always trusted her. And yet, a seed of doubt had taken root in me, refusing to be ignored. The weekend dragged on. Claire seemed distant, her smile forced, her laughter hollow. We exchanged pleasantries, but there was an unspoken tension that neither of us acknowledged. I told myself to let it go, that it was probably all in my head. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more the doubts festered. By Sunday evening, the silence between us was deafening. A few days later, when I got home from work, I found Claire's phone on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, her voice humming softly through the closed bathroom door. Her phone was locked, but something pushed me to try her password. My heart raced as I hesitated. I knew it was wrong to snoop, but a part of me argued that it was only wrong if I found nothing. So, I typed in her usual code, our anniversary date. The screen unlocked, and there it was, a text thread with someone named Matt. Some of the messages were playful, others flirtatious, hinting at more than just a friendship. My mind reeled, each word feeling like a punch to the gut. This wasn't the Claire I knew, or at least the Claire I thought I knew. As I stood there, reading through messages I had no right to see, my world seemed to tilt, the foundation of everything we built together cracking beneath me. I didn't say anything to her that night. I barely spoke, not trusting myself to hide the turmoil roiling inside. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work, the same as any other day. She moved around the kitchen, packing her lunch, her phone back in her pocket, her smile as bright as ever. But now, all I could see were those messages, each one another blow to the person I thought I knew. Over the following days, I kept my calm, though every moment with her felt like an elaborate charade. I replayed her words, her actions, the excuses she'd made over the past months. I thought of the Friday nights she'd come home late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. The times she'd worked late, the unexplained weekend girls' nights. It all added up, piece by piece, a puzzle I was only now putting together. But I couldn't keep up the act forever. The lies had torn a hole in our life, a gaping wound I couldn't ignore. So I started planning, each day moving a little closer to the inevitable confrontation. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted the satisfaction of reclaiming the control I'd lost. If she thought she could make me the fool, she was wrong. The days dragged by with a strange mixture of tension and calm. Every moment felt like waiting on the edge of something, teetering just before the drop. Claire carried on as usual, talking about work, our weekend plans, even laughing at her own jokes. But I couldn't shake the image of those messages from my mind. Her words felt hollow, as if each one echoed back to me, questioning, does she think I'm a fool? As the week wore on, I decided I couldn't sit back and watch this unfold passively. If I was going to confront her, I wanted to do it on my terms, with proof that left no room for excuses. There was no way I would sit through her denying it, her twisting the truth, trying to turn the blame on me. It had to be done cleanly and decisively. So, I spent that week making my preparations quietly, taking one step at a time. On Thursday night, I stayed up late, and when Claire went to bed, I grabbed her phone, the lock code still fresh in my mind. I told myself this would be quick, that I was only confirming what I already knew. But when I opened her messages, what I saw made my heart sink further. The texts had gone on for months, each one showing an intimacy I hadn't seen from her in years. Matt was more than a coworker. They had shared details of their days, inside jokes, even things about our life together that Claire was using as material for their conversations. A part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, demand an explanation, let my anger spill out in the heat of the moment. But I held back. This wasn't just about getting the truth, it was about reclaiming control. I wanted her to feel the same level of betrayal she'd brought into my life, to understand that trust wasn't something you could shatter without consequence. I put her phone back where it was, tucked away all those messages in the back of my mind, and went to bed. On Friday, I called Josh. He knew something was up, I could hear it in his voice as soon as he answered. I didn't give him the full details, just enough for him to understand the situation. I asked him to come over the next night when we'd be having a few friends over. Just keep an eye out, I said. Let me know if you see anything unusual. Josh had been a good friend for years, and he didn't press for more details. I'm there, man, he replied. And with that, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The plan was in motion, and I was ready to see this through. The next day, Claire was in a cheerful mood, seemingly unbothered, as if we were still the same couple we'd been in the early years. She even kissed me on the cheek as she left to pick up a few things for the party, humming to herself as she walked out the door. Watching her leave, I wondered how long she had been carrying this lie around so effortlessly, how many times she had walked out of this house with that same lightness, off to meet him. When evening came, the house filled with our friends, laughter echoing through the rooms, the smell of food mingling with the faint scent of cologne and perfume as people chatted and settled in. I was a good host, all smiles and small talk, going through the motions. But my mind was elsewhere, waiting for the moment when Claire would slip away, when she would give herself away, one way or another. About halfway through the evening, I noticed her stepping away to answer a call. Her phone had been buzzing all night, and each time she glanced at it with a subtle excitement, as if it held secrets I wasn't supposed to know. I watched as she moved to the side of the room, her voice low, her back turned to me. She spoke briefly, then tucked her phone back into her pocket, a small smile lingering on her face as she returned to the party. That was all the confirmation I needed. The pieces had fallen into place, and now I just needed to wait for the right moment to pull the rug out from under her. I caught Josh's eye across the room, gave him a quick nod, and he returned it with a subtle acknowledgement. He knew, without words, what was coming. Later that night, when most of the guests had gone, I suggested we head out to the patio for a drink, just the two of us. Claire seemed hesitant, glancing at her phone again as if she were expecting something, but she eventually agreed. We sat in silence for a moment, the cool night air hanging between us. I poured us each a glass of whiskey, taking a slow sip as I gathered my thoughts. Finally, I looked at her and said, "So, how was work this week?" She looked surprised by the question, then laughed lightly. "The usual. Busy, lots of meetings." Her eyes darted away, and her fingers toyed with the glass in her hand. She was nervous, which wasn't like her. Claire was usually steady, confident. But tonight, there was a tension in her that she couldn't quite hide. "And how's Matt?" I asked, keeping my tone casual, my gaze steady on her. She froze, her hand stopping mid-movement, and for a brief second, her eyes met mine, wide with surprise. It was the look of someone caught off guard, of someone who'd been playing a part and had suddenly forgotten their lines. Her mouth opened as if she were about to say something, then closed again, the silence stretching out between us. "Matt?" she echoed, trying to recover, a strained smile on her face. Who's Matt?" I leaned back in my chair, taking another sip, letting her scramble. "You know, the guy from work. The one you're close with." Her face flushed, her eyes flicking down to her glass. I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to laugh, but it came out forced, hollow. "Come on, Claire. Don't insult my intelligence." My voice was calm, almost too calm. It was the voice of someone who'd already seen the evidence, who already knew the truth. "I saw the texts." Her face went pale, and she set her glass down, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, she was at a loss for words, her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. It's not what you think," she stammered, but there was no conviction in her voice, no fire, just the empty words of someone who knew the game was up. He's just a friend." "Is that what friends do?" I asked, my voice quiet, but cutting. "Share secrets, keep things from each other's spouses. Talk about their lives in ways they wouldn't dare with their own partners." She tried to speak, but no words came. She just sat there, looking down, her face a mixture of guilt and shame. I waited, giving her a chance to say something, anything, but the silence stretched on, heavy and unforgiving. Finally, I stood up, looking down at her, a mixture of sadness and anger in my chest. "I thought I could trust you, Claire. But you made a choice, and now, so will I." With that, I walked back into the house, leaving her alone on the patio, the night air cold and unyielding. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control again, like I had taken back a part of myself she had tried to steal. After that night, everything changed. Claire and I barely spoke, our once comfortable home thick with silence. She moved around quietly, her presence now nothing more than a shadow, haunted by our confrontation on the patio. I could feel her attempts to bridge the distance, but each one fell flat, crumbling under the weight of what I knew. The days turned into a careful routine. She'd wake early, make coffee, and slip out before I was fully awake. By the time she returned from work, I'd usually found some reason to be out, meeting with friends, picking up groceries, anything to avoid being in the same room. Claire's voice had lost its usual warmth, reduced to short phrases, questions that never sought real answers. We were strangers in the shell of our marriage. One Saturday morning, she lingered at the kitchen table, watching me make breakfast. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should talk. Maybe I owe you an explanation." I set my mug down, glancing at her, feeling the anger simmering just below the surface. "An explanation?" I said, my tone colder than I intended. "What could you possibly explain that would change any of this?" Her face flushed, and she looked down at her hands, twisting the ring on her finger. I didn't mean for it to happen," she murmured. Things got complicated, and I got lost." I crossed my arms, waiting for her to continue, my mind already filled with retorts I was holding back. She had wanted me to understand, to forgive her missteps, but I wasn't interested in understanding her betrayal. I wanted her to understand the weight of what she'd done. I felt like something was missing. "With us," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I know that doesn't excuse it, but I needed something, and Matt was there." She met my gaze, her eyes pleading for understanding that I couldn't offer. I exhaled, the anger bubbling up. "Needed something?" I repeated, feeling my voice rise. "And instead of coming to me, instead of trying to fix it together, you found someone else to fill that void?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to let her tears soften me, wasn't about to let them sweep away the reality of what she'd done. "I didn't know how to tell you," she whispered. "You were so distant lately, so wrapped up in everything else. I thought you wouldn't understand. So you assumed I'd never know?" I challenged, my voice sharp. "You thought you'd just keep this secret forever?" She shook her head, wiping her eyes, but her silence said everything. In that moment, I realized how deeply she'd underestimated me, how little she understood the person she'd chosen to betray. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor, and walked out, leaving her alone with her guilt. She had made her choice, and I was finished listening to her excuses. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I knew I couldn't go on like this. I needed closure, an ending to this chapter that had torn my life apart. She had taken something from me, but I would take back the control she thought she'd wrested from me. If she wanted to leave me for someone else, fine. But she would do it on my terms, not hers. On Monday morning, I went to see my lawyer. I'd known him for years, he had helped me with some business matters in the past, but this was different. I sat across from him, my mind racing, each thought a mixture of anger and sadness as I explained the situation. He listened, nodding thoughtfully, taking notes. "It's a clean case, then," he said after I finished. "We can draft the papers, make it as swift as possible. You're entitled to a fair split, given the circumstances." "Fair," I said, the word feeling hollow. Nothing about this felt fair. The following week, I worked with him to get everything in place. I knew what was coming, but I didn't tell Claire, not yet. I didn't want her to have time to prepare, to play the victim in her story. She tried to shatter my trust, my faith in her, and I wanted her to feel the weight of that betrayal in every part of her life. I made sure to be home the night she received the papers. She walked in, her face already carrying the weariness of our weeks of silence. I sat at the dining table, the papers in front of me, watching her as she entered. The second she saw the envelope, her face went pale. What is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's what you asked for," I replied, my voice calm, controlled. "You wanted a way out. You got it." She took a step back, her hand covering her mouth as she stared at the envelope, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe regret, maybe fear. This This isn't what I wanted, she said, her voice breaking. I thought we could work through this, that you'd understand. Understand? I laughed bitterly. You want me to understand that you chose someone else, that you spent months lying to my face? That's not understanding, Claire. That's a violation of everything we built together. Tears filled her eyes as she reached out, her hand trembling. Please, we don't have to do this. I'll do anything, whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling. I held up a hand, stopping her. This isn't a negotiation, Claire. This is the consequence of your actions. I pushed the papers toward her. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. I'm done being your backup plan. Her face crumpled, and she sank into a chair, her hands gripping the papers as if they were her last lifeline. I watched her, feeling a strange satisfaction, a sense of justice. This was the closure I needed, the proof that I was still in control of my own life, of my own choices. Is it really over? She asked, her voice small, defeated. It's been over since you made that first choice, I replied, my tone softer but unyielding. You just didn't realize it. She looked down, her shoulders shaking as she let out a sob. Part of me felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. This was the ending she'd written the moment she crossed that line, the story she'd set in motion without a thought for what it would mean. After she left that night, I sat alone, the quiet filling every corner of the house. The silence, once so suffocating, now felt strangely comforting. It was as if the house had exhaled, releasing the last remnants of her betrayal, leaving me with the peace I hadn't felt in months. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my life, piecing it back together one day at a time. I went to the gym, reconnected with friends, picked up hobbies I'd long neglected. And slowly, I began to feel whole again, like I was reclaiming the parts of myself she tried to bury. Every now and then, I'd hear from mutual friends, asking if we were okay, if there was any chance we'd reconcile. I gave them the same answer each time: some things, once broken, can't be fixed. They seemed to understand, nodding with sympathy but not pressing further. And I knew, with every step, that I was moving forward, leaving her and the betrayal behind. Life wasn't perfect, and I still carried the scars of what she'd done. But I was learning to live with them, to wear them like armor rather than chains. She tried to take something from me, but in the end, I'd taken it back. Months passed, and life started to regain a sense of rhythm, though it was different now, a solitary one, quieter, introspective. My friends told me I seemed more at peace, more grounded. I had settled into a routine that felt solid, reliable, free from the turmoil that had once consumed me. The remnants of Claire's presence, our shared belongings, and memories had slowly been packed away, a process that was both cathartic and strangely empty. On a crisp autumn evening, I was in the middle of preparing a late dinner when my phone rang. The display showed an unknown number, and I hesitated before answering, hoping it wasn't some last-minute work issue. But when I answered, the voice on the other end was unexpected, Claire's mother, her voice soft but laced with worry. "James, it's Sandra," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but it's Claire. She's in the hospital." My grip on the phone tightened, confusion and alarm hitting me all at once. "What happened?" I managed to ask, feeling the chill of dread seep into my bones. She was in a car accident. It's serious. The doctors, they're not sure if she'll make it." Her words left me stunned. I tried to process what she was saying, but it felt surreal, like the air had thickened around me, each word landing like a blow. After everything, after all the hurt and distance, hearing this news struck me in a place I thought I had closed off. Despite what she'd done, I couldn't bear the thought of her lying there, helpless, maybe even, dying. Sandra's voice broke through the silence again, hesitant. "She's been asking for you, James." I arrived at the hospital an hour later, the sterile smell and dim lights casting an eerie, unfamiliar feeling over me. The nurse directed me to her room, and when I entered, I was unprepared for what I saw. Claire lay on the bed, pale and fragile, her arm in a cast, her face marred with bruises, and her eyes hollow. She looked up when she heard me, and despite the tubes and monitors, she managed a faint, broken smile. "James," she whispered, her voice so weak it barely reached me. I approached her bed slowly, each step heavy with the weight of everything left unsaid. I couldn't bring myself to sit down, so I stood beside her, searching for words, any words, but none came. I was simply numb. "Thank you for coming," she said, her eyes brimming with something that looked like regret. I nodded, still silent, unsure of what to say to a woman I'd once loved, a woman who had torn my world apart but now lay before me in a state so vulnerable it unraveled the anger I thought I'd carried. I had expected to feel a sense of justice, of finality, but instead, I felt hollow, as if we'd lost something more than just each other in the process. "I never wanted this," she continued, struggling with every word. "I never wanted to hurt you like I did. I thought I needed something more, but I was wrong. And now, it's too late." A tear slid down her cheek, and her voice cracked. "I was selfish, James. I thought you'd just understand, like you always did, that you'd be there no matter what. But I betrayed that. I betrayed you." There was nothing I could say to lessen her guilt, nothing that would erase the things we'd done to each other. So, I just sat there, allowing her to speak, to let the words tumble out like she needed them to. She reached out with her uninjured hand, fingers trembling, as if unsure whether I'd take it. After a long hesitation, I reached forward, my hand wrapping around hers, a gentle gesture I hadn't thought I'd ever make again. Her skin was cold, her grip weak, but she clung to me, as if holding on to something she was terrified to lose. "You were the best thing in my life," she whispered. "And I let you go. I'll always regret that." I wanted to tell her I had moved on, that I had left the pain behind, but I couldn't. In that moment, I realized that, despite the distance I'd tried to create, a part of me still felt tied to her, still ached for the life we had built and destroyed. Maybe it wasn't love anymore, but it was something close to it, a sadness I couldn't shake. We sat in silence, the low hum of hospital machinery filling the room, each of us lost in the weight of what we'd done to one another. Eventually, her breathing grew shallow, her grip on my hand loosening, her eyes heavy with the pain she'd carried and the words she'd left unsaid. "James," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I'm sorry." Her hand fell limp in mine, and the monitor beside her let out a soft, flat tone. A nurse rushed in, followed by a doctor, but I knew it was too late. I sat there, still holding her hand, my own heart pounding in a hollow chest as the reality sank in. They told me I could stay as long as I needed, that they'd be outside if I needed anything. But all I could do was sit there, numb, watching as they covered her body, that familiar face now forever silent, forever beyond my reach. In those moments alone, I realized that no amount of distance, of anger, of resolutions or legal papers could erase the pain of losing her. She had taken so much from me, yes, but I hadn't realized until that moment how much of myself I'd given willingly, how much of my heart was tied to the idea of what we could have been. I had believed moving on meant forgetting her, but now, faced with the finality of death, I understood that some things you carry with you no matter how hard you try to let go. Leaving the hospital that night, I felt a weight settle over me, heavier than any I'd felt in the weeks since our split. The irony struck me hard, that she'd be forever in my heart, not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the one I had loved fiercely and lost completely. I walked out into the cold night, feeling both freer and more burdened than ever, knowing I would carry the memory of her, of us, like a scar, a mark that would never fully heal. And as I stood alone, staring into the vast, empty darkness, I realized that even in her final moments, she had claimed a part of me that would never truly belong to anyone else.